Hello, welcome to BikeSocial and welcome to Hinckley. This is the Triumph Factory Visitor Experience. And in this video, we're going to be talking about this bike, which is a 2005 Rocket 3. But in 2024, it marks the 20th anniversary of the model. So we're going to ride this, we're going to ride the latest version, that's the Rocket 3 GT. And we're going to hear from Triumph's Chief Engineer, Stuart Wood. Don't go anywhere. Well, welcome on board. So this is the Triumph Rocket 3 GT. It's the Chrome edition, it's the 2023 model. Mechanically it's no different to the 2020 model when this version came out. But the big difference here is of course the price, 23.5 grand for the exact bike that I'm on right now. And it's been a long time since I've ridden one of these. So I did the launch back in, well, it's the end of 2019 ahead of the 2020 model year release. So we're celebrating the 20 years of Rocket by riding the both bikes here in Hinckley, or near Hinckley, at the end of 2023. So that is, as I said, 4 years after this particular bike was released. Are you confused? Yeah, I am. I've confused myself. So we have in our fleet of 3, ahead of me you can see on the lead bike, that's the Rocket 3R, and that is the Chief Engineer of Triumph. His name is Stuart Wood. He's been with the company for many years. And he was involved in the project when this bike, in the middle here, we've got Mike Armitage from Bauer Media, who's riding the 2004 bike, which has been loaned to the 3 of us today for this particular project. And then me on the GT. Yeah, like I said, I did the launch of this back in end of 2019 in Tenerife, which was it was the event where there was some very high up member of dignitary from Russia and who was meeting with some very high up member or dignitary of Russia. It might well have been Putin and his Far Eastern cohort. And they blocked off a couple of levels of the hotel that we were all staying in, and we thought that it was because they heard about the rocket launch. Hey, badum. It's not a joke, by the way, it was real, that did actually happen. Anyway, that was in Tenerife, where the roads are, if you've not ridden or driven or been to Tenerife, then let me tell you that the roads are beautifully smooth, incredibly scenic, so you can ride up or drive up or visit the mountain. You got the mountain and you become very high, so above sea level, and you I can't quite remember the detail. I think it was 2,000 meters, about 7,000 feet, something like that. You could tell a big difference between sea level riding and up there riding, just because the air gets thinner and it actually affects the way the engine performs. Tell you what I'm going to do today here in November. I'm going to turn the heated grips on. What is it? I'm on level 2 of 3. A bit nippy. I've also got my fairly summer weight gloves on. Tell you what else I'm going to do is when I can remember how to change the mode. M for mode. So we'll have that in road mode. I think you've got to off the throttle and then, I don't know, you just got to select it. Close throttle, there you go. There we go. Right, that's a bit livelier than rain mode in which I was. Oh yes. I remember this now. It's all coming back to me. 2.5 litres of engine, 3 cylinders. It's the largest. Triumph lived on the fact that it was the largest, but still is, the largest production, or the largest engine in a production motorcycle in the world. They love saying things like that. They love a bit of marketing spin. They love having a headline. And you know, for £23,500 worth of motorcycle, you'd normally expect it to be fairly exclusive in terms of its clientele. But the level of interest in this bike was second to none. You know, you could have been riding around Tenerife on a Panigale V4R and it wouldn't have had as much attention as these things had. I remember stopping off at the coffee stop, at the lunch stops, and just crowds and crowds of people who didn't give a monkeys about motorbikes, and equally those who do, were just crowding around the bikes, wanted to know about them, because they hold such a presence. It's a huge, great lump of engine. It's a huge, great motorbike. It weighs over 300 kilos, and then you add the 90 of me on top of that, so it's a big old thing to hoik around, but it doesn't feel that big. Yeah, the emphasis on the word that. It feels big, doesn't feel that big. You know, I've ridden bikes that are lighter but more cumbersome. I mean, this thing is just a pure engineering class. It's top spec in terms of, you know, what Triumph have been able to develop, and it's momentous. Stuart and I were talking off camera just before we started off on this ride about the Teslas. Well, he and I both own a Tesla, and we were discussing it and how it is fast. It's a super commuter, that's the words that Stuart used. It takes a lot of fatigue out of driving, but it lacks soul, of course. And you get on this thing and it's the polar opposite. It's got a hell of a lot of soul. It's got a hell of a lot of presence under you, around you, and also for those that are in front of you, following you, next to you. It's a big thing. And I think, as I've said it before, as motorcyclists, we're a funny bunch, aren't we? Because we have to wear a helmet, but we don't mind wearing a helmet. So there's something about helmet wearing that makes us a little secretive, a little bit more, you know, we're naughty, we can get away with stuff because people don't know who we are. You know, we've seen it in the past with the likes of Prince William or you know, Hollywood A-listers. They put the helmet on, they could be anyone, they're not noticeable. And we like to draw attention to ourselves, I think. I think that's fairly quite a generic, sweeping statement, but I think we do. I certainly do. I think that a bike like this, it really suits generic motorcyclists because it's got the presence. It's got the fear factor in a way. It's exciting because you're not quite sure what you're going to get from it. You know, you look at the spec sheet, and the thing's ludicrous. 221 newton meters of torque, which I think is 167 foot-pounds. It's 165 brake horsepower. And we've talked about the weight, and we've talked about the size of the engine. So it's a behemoth. And there are bikes out there that are similar. I mean, we could talk about Harley Davidson, we could talk about Indian, we could talk about Ducati Diavels. And there are similar bikes from a performance perspective, from a weight perspective, from the sort of seating perspective. What do you call this? A muscle cruiser, I think. You know? Whoa. It's epic. And when we use superlatives like that, they've kind of been dumbed down or vanillaized by today's influencers who, you know, describe everything they see as amazing. Also, they don't know the true word of vibes, the true meaning of the word vibes. They're all like, oh, summer vibes, winter vibes, Sunday vibes, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, what they need is a 2.5 litre, 3-cylinder, 165 brake horsepower vibe. Earlier today I rode the Tiger 900, which is another triple from Triumph, and it's got that T-plane crank. because it's been designed in such a way that it's a lot of it's down to sort of mid to low range torque. That's vibey, but this is really actually very, very smooth. So it's a very familiar setup in terms of the instrument and the handlebar setup, the switch gear. If you've ridden a Triumph over the was built in the last 5 years, it's all very familiar. From the left, you've got heated grips on the left here. Got your running lights, traction control, cruise control. These are your mode buttons, the one that's M written on it. The indicators, obviously, that's your joystick to control all the gubbins on the screen. Horn, lights, dimmer, dip. And then this side, you've got your home button, which again operates some of the stuff on there. Steering lock. This is your rocker switch for your ignition. Behold! Part of the reason why we're here is obviously the 20th anniversary of the Rocket 3. And check this out. So you are riding with me on board a 2005 Triumph Rocket 3. So this is owned by a chap called Mick, who is from London and who has owned it from new. And he's banged in about 50,000 miles. And I'm just hesitating a bit because they're taking some pictures in front, as you can probably see, out the side of the car, of the new bike, the 2023 GT, the Rocket 3 GT. So here we are on what is almost the original. 2004 was the first year that the Rocket 3 made it into production, and this is the 2005 model, which is identical to 2004, but it was the only differences with this one, he's done a couple of upgrades. He's got some Hagen shocks and colour-coded radiator surround. I think that was it. What was it? No, there was something else. Oh, he's powder coated the wheels to make it easier to clean. That's what he said. And it's in gorgeous condition, considering it's the best part of 19 years old. You know, the chrome is still clean and sparkly and shiny. And I believe this one made about 143 brake horsepower. Please don't berate me too much in the comments section if I am incorrect. But of course this one doesn't have a quick shifter, and it's clearly what's significant about this model and the one I rode earlier on, the GT just in front of us. Thank you, sir. This feels a little bit more agricultural, especially on the gear shift. The gear changes. Much longer throw, and it's quite easy not to select the relevant gear, which I think was a bit of a common issue back in the day. See, 2005 doesn't really feel that long ago, does it? And yet we're talking about 20 years. And the engineering, oh my word, the development, the difference between this and that, just night and day, but mainly electronically. So not only with rider aids and traction control and ABS and all the rest of it, and but from an engineering perspective, you still got that soul. You've still got what makes this a significant model. You know, back when these were first unveiled, obviously it was we've already talked about, we've already mentioned Harley Davidson, we've already mentioned Ducati, and it was sort of Europe's version of this big American muscle cruiser. And it was a significant model, and like I said earlier, people wanted to see it. They wanted to look at it, and it was because it was so different. We're going down here, really? Yes, we are. But from a rider perspective, the experience of riding something like this is just extraordinary. Like what it gives back to you, what you feel as a rider, it's just lush. So I can't tell you the differences in the suspension or its handling or brakes necessarily, because they're not really gone too far. But the off-throttle performance, the torque, the power, you know, at the speeds we've been doing, it's very, very similar. You know, 140 odd brake horsepower is nothing to be, it's not, you're not going to laugh at that, are you? Oh, it picks up beautifully. And it's not just up the bottom either, it's through that middle. Red line's what, 6,500. This lovely analog tacho. Twin clocks. It's got the optional extra, the non-factory fit. It doesn't even work, it's not 12 o'clock. Woo! Oh yes! That gives you that buzz. You know when the little butterflies in your tummy go, woo! Yeah, that's that. Do you know, you don't really need any more gears. I think it's only got 5. But I don't know what I mean, but I don't really need to change gear because it's got so much torque and it's really comfy. Really comfortable. I mean, comfortable not just in the riding position, but comfortable on the road doing what it's doing. Lovely, lovely. Welcome to the delights of Hinckley, home of Triumph. Look, how about that? Much more of a cruiser. It's a bit of a stretch. It's more of a stretch to the bars. I love that sound. You probably can't hear it as well as I can. Well, joining me now, Chief Engineer for Triumph, Stuart Wood. Stuart, thank you so much for inviting us down to your house.
Good to see you.
And yourself. So 36 years strong, that's right, isn't it? We talked about this earlier on off camera.
Yep. 1987.
That's a serious innings, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And what was sort of the state of the business when you were joined? And specifically for what we're going to talk about here, Rocket 3, was that even considered? That level of bike, or the style of bike for Triumph?
No, not at that stage. When I joined, it was 4 years before we were in production with anything. We were very much trying to just get off the ground with a range of bikes, aiming at what was clearly selling, what people wanted, what they were demonstrating they wanted. And in a lot of cases, that was across the frame 4-cylinder. But because we were looking at modular to get a bigger range of bikes, we were doing 4-cylinder and 3-cylinder. Okay, and interestingly, that turned out to be a very good thing to do. Of course,
yeah. And you were looking at a global audience here, weren't you?
Yeah, we were. From day one, we were, but we were offering European or bikes that actually the majority of bikes were being made in Japan, but they were an evolution of where European bikes had been, and obviously a lot of that evolution, the last 10 years of that evolution had been in Japan.
Where does the Rocket story begin then? At what point does someone say, I know, let's put a 2.5 litre 3-cylinder engine together?
Well, we're looking for a bigger bike. We were already offering bikes that in the American market, but we're trying to grow the American market. And one of the things that was quite clear is we needed larger capacity for some of those customers.
Did you focus on the engine originally, or was it about the style of the bike primarily, and then you kind of fitted both together, or was it just holistically came together?
It was a bit of both. Engine was a big measurable thing, that you needed bigger capacity to compete with the main sellers in America, but you needed a cruiser style. You needed something that people would want to buy. And this is the bulk of the market. Obviously, sports bikes were selling in America as well, but we already offered that. So we're trying to get into the mainstream American market.
So bigger was better, essentially.
Definitely bigger was better, but when we started, we had no idea that it would be this big. It wasn't a light bulb moment that said, oh, you've got to have a 2.3 litre bike to compete in America at all. It was an evolution of an idea, getting bigger and bigger, but also seeing custom bikes that were being built, where cruisers were being taken and given more performance, including 240 section rear tyres, which look ridiculous and in a great way. You know, it's just, well, why wouldn't you? And that was one of the big influences in what the Rocket became, is starting with that really huge, imposing statement tyre, and then giving it enough torque to justify it.
So here we are talking about a 20 years of the Rocket, when in actual fact it's more like, what, 25, or perhaps even more when you look back at those original ideas and conversations. I mean, there's so many questions here, but at what stage did someone say, to go to the bosses and say, you know, we've got a great idea. Collectively, we think a 2.3 litre three-cylinder muscle cruiser would be the way forwards to you know, accelerate this business.
It wasn't a conversation like that at all. John Bloor was involved in every conversation about this bike, every single one. And
was he encouraging you?
Well, he initiated it, actually. He actually initiated it, certainly at the point where we're looking at a 1200 cross frame 3 and then a 1500 cross the frame 3, and realised that maybe we wanted a bit more and change configuration. He was involved in every step of it.
Why did it settle at 2.3? Was that the maximum?
That was absolutely the maximum. At the time, there was an engineering limit for us, self-imposed engineering limit of 101.6 mil bore, the 4-inch bore that we'd seen work effectively in American muscle cars. And the stroke limit was literally what we stopped increasing the capacity of the engine at the point we couldn't modify our machine tools to make it a bigger stroke crankshaft.
So not only was it the largest engine production bike in the world, it was probably the largest piston size.
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
motorcycling.
It was, yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's stunning, isn't it? The headline figure. I mean, the marketing department must be rubbing their hands with glee, thinking, yes, we're onto an absolute cracker here with that kind of size.
Well, it's all headlines, isn't it? It is all headlines. It is extreme. But the thing that we wanted to create was a motorbike. And every time we work on a motorbike, when you get the chance to do something from the ground up, you have to integrate everything. So you can't just make a huge engine and then
expect it to work.
Put it in a motorbike. Yeah. The whole bike has to be formatted, formulated, and the engine layout has to be done around a whole motorbike. You can't just pick a 2.3 litre engine and then build a motorbike around it.
So as the engineering department, you and your colleagues were going, let's go bigger, go on, we can get, yeah.
Well, it wasn't us, it was the marketing guys. It was really Triumph America pushing for more and more capacity. So every time we looked at it and said, well, there's the possibility for maybe year 3 or 4 to do an update, they said, we need it at the start, absolutely need it at the start. And we stopped jacking that up at the point where we just couldn't go any further.
And the suspension guys and the frame guys are going, well, hang on.
No, it's okay. All of that is fine. We know it's all engineering, okay? So we can design a motorbike to work with any engine capacity or any power. It's not scary. What is tough is keeping all the requirements in place. For instance, you want clean, efficient burn engine. You need to make them obviously reliable and durable and easy to use. It's got to be homologated. You know, this isn't about building a special in any way at all. This is, you know, you have to have all of that diligence in the background while still allowing it to be this huge character and brutal motorbike.
And even now, we still look back at those times and think, I mean, what a phenomenal project. But of course it did work, didn't it? Because it sold.
Absolutely.
And went on for 5 years of production, is that right? Or maybe more?
More than 10.
Yeah. Oh, because there were different versions, weren't there? There's the touring
absolutely.
and the, yeah.
Absolutely.
And what happened then? What happened? Why did it sort of phase out for that period? What?
Well, at that point, we needed a large evolution of the bike, both in terms of tech content. So we were already looking at everything from ride-by-wire to corner optimized ABS traction control, all those things that you would want in a modern bike. You were going to have to go again to a huge degree with the existing bike. One of the other things we wanted was mass reduction, and overall we reduced the mass by 40 kilograms. Yeah, so we had more performance, more capability, better comfort, everything was better, plus all the technology, and it's lighter, which all helps then fuel efficiency, emissions,
well, I was going to point
and
yes,
handling.
at that point as well. And then came the Rocket X in 2000. Oh, this is going to be a test of 15,
14 or 15,
yeah,
maybe 15.
Oh, no, it was X because of 10, wasn't it?
Yep.
With Roman numerals.
Yep.
And we moved quickly on in our story to present day. So launched at the very end of 2019 by way of photographs and videos, and to us, the media. We rode it in Tenerife on the press launch, and then 2020 it hit the shelves. And I mean, again, what a feat of engineering that was, just when you thought that something couldn't get bigger and better. And
there's a lot more to the current rocket. I guess the original rocket was the last of the truly mechanical motorbikes. As I've got to explain this a bit, everything is mechanically operated. You've not got any electronic help. And electronic help is really, really positive. It's not all about rider aids to make you go faster. There are things we can do with an engine when you have electronic control that you wouldn't be able to do when you've got manual control. This engine, well, the original engine was big enough that if you didn't have enough crank inertia and you cracked the throttle wide open, you could stall it if it was ticking over at a low tick-over speed. So you want a low tick-over speed and you want low inertia. So with ride-by-wire, when you request wide open throttle, if you know the engine's at a certain speed, you don't have to give it wide open throttle. You're not going to get any benefit. You're not going to get any benefit in that situation from giving it wide open throttle, but it gives you effectively sort of virtual inertia for the crank. And there are other areas where it does that as well. So there's all sorts of ways you can reduce the mass of the bike, you can make the bike better, you can make it feel better without it feel like the electronics is giving you any intervention at all. Yeah.
So we've ridden both bikes today. I said both bikes. We had a 2005 model kindly loaned to us, and then the latest iteration of the GT. You can definitely feel the mechanical differences, but there's still very much the sort of the soul of the bike is there, the feeling of the bike, and you guys must have worked hard on the current variant even of the bike to replicate that. Is that right? Is that fair?
Absolutely. You've got to keep that character. You want to keep the urgency. You want to keep that bite, get that feel. What I was saying about any intervention with electronics, you just don't want it to feel like you've softened the bike. In fact, it allows us to make the bike harder, give it more bite, give it more edge, actually, because there's only those one or two small areas where you need to soften it, and normally that would degrade the whole offering. And that's one of the reasons we didn't want to go keep the old engine and evolve it further. As you evolve it, you end up softening edges, and that's not where the fun is.
Yeah.
You want to keep that passion.
The current iteration of Rocket 3 has been around for some years now. The public got to see it at the end of 2019, and that project was clearly 2, 3, 4 years prior to that it started. What are the next steps with Rocket 3, bearing in mind the world is changing with internal combustion on its way out, theoretically? Are you guys happy with the fact that you've got that title of world's largest production engine? Will there be another one? And how is the EV future going to interact with Rocket? Okay,
well, Rocket is an iconic name, it's an iconic motorbike, with 2 of them now. There is every possibility you could have a Rocket that was fully electric at some point when the technology would allow you to have appropriate sized batteries, keep the mass low enough. But you can certainly make enough power to give it electric version of a rocket the character you want. But we're probably a way off having the battery technology to be able to offer the same thing. So it's offering the right things with the right technology. The rocket with this petrol engine is pretty damn good. And it's got both the refinement now, it's even so much more refined than the first generation, but it's got more performance and more character. I think that's pretty good. I'd stick with that.
It's been a pretty incredible chapter for Triumph, and it's almost timed nicely that EV is on its way and rocket can go, or you guys can say, well, there's the rocket.
That was the pinnacle.
Yeah, exactly. Stuart, thank you so much for your time.
Michael.
Brilliant. Thank you for your time as well. Hope you've enjoyed it. Any questions, put them in the comments below, and I'm sure Stuart or one of his colleagues will help us out and answer them.
Of course.
See you next time.
Is your camera's on, is it?